Welcome to Ladd's Exegesis. This is the third part of the methodology. This is the methodology you will practice throughout the semester. This is a presentation by Susan Hares for BNPB 542. So let's look at the very heart of exegesis. Exegesis has at its very heart observation, interpretation, and application. We observe something, we ask questions, then we interpret it to answer our questions. The question is looked at in interpretation. Other sources are sought, such as Greek lexicons, in dictionaries, theological dictionaries, interpreters' dictionaries. Commentaries are sought, and application. So in our and then an application says, is this for all time or a specific time? And then we apply it. So let's look at this. The heart of all of it is observe and write down your questions. Answer your questions based on scholarly facts. Determine if it's a global or specific truth, and apply. Now, observation, as Sherlock Holmes would say, is a very difficult thing. Ladd's focus in his methodology is to teach you about the observation, to teach you about how to look at the Greek text, the inner text, the things that are within the text, the things that are beyond the text, but in the same light. What's the history? What's the culture? What's the origin? He then shows you how to look at theology, and lastly, to application. You are driving from the Greek text to the application. So this is the one-page sheet you're going to see a lot. We study first the text. Is the Greek text accurate? You will not need to work on the accuracy of the Greek text. Most scholars who study a passage will look at the Greek text accuracy, and they will determine from sources if there's any set of words which might be questionable. How do we say questionable? We simply know that we have different papyruses across the time that the disciples wrote, that were copied, recopied, copied again, and the best copies is what we're looking for. What can we go back and find the historical? The intertextual actually looks at what we see in the words, and we studied a lot for the Greek grammar and Greek words. So first you ask, do we understand the words? Well, a Greek lexicon will help you. There are several. We'll go through how to use them. Grammatical. How do the words relate in sentence? All that study in Greek 1 and 2 teaches you how the grammatical Greek should be written. Now, you may find in Paul and in Luke sophisticated Greek usage. At that point, we'll study together how the sentences relate together. Then we look at syntactical, how words relate in a paragraph. These three things, lexical, grammatical, and syntactical, you have done both in English in your inductive Bible studies or in some of the other work you've done for your New Testament. That's a probably solid piece that many of you will have experience on in English, and we will transfer that to Greek. The next thing is the historical setting, the context of writing, comparison of other rights, and rhetorical, how is language to be understood. I will give you a lot of videos on the historical settings, the contextual settings in the culture, the comparative writings, and rhetorical. How is the language to be understood in the Bible for Acts or 1st and 2nd Thessalonians? Finally, when we get down to all of that and we've looked at, observed that, We'll observe what theology is being expressed. We'll try to observe, and then we'll try to confirm it. And we'll ask, what does it teach us about God? And in the end, we will apply it. How do we apply theology to our life? That is the theological task I spoke about in the second video. So this is your whole course in one page, I always like to say, but there's a lot to dig into it. Let's just dig a little underneath in this short video, and we will cover this over again. The Greek text is important. There are, in this text from Acts 35, we will go through in your first course section as an introduction, has two particular addings. And after some days, Meret Tivas Henas, Paul said to Barnabas, Ipin pros Banapan Paulus, Pistos Ipis Dantes de Pistasu Amen. Okay. After some days, Paul said to Barnabas, having returned, let us also visit the brethren. Now there are two places in scribal things. Some said de, which is an emphatic that emphasizes the next subjunctive word. The other is an and. So, or a de, which can be also and. Now it means about the same, and it can be a scribal error. Your de delta eta could be turned to a delta epsilon just because that's common Greek when it's covering. But it has a different set of emphasis. The de gives an emphatic sense. Having returned, let us now visit our brethren. And the other one is less emphatic. Let us also visit our brethren. The question is, which is better? And scholars say that the first, which is what you see at the UBS or the Nessalon, is better because the rest of the text is emphatic, which we will have gone through in your first lesson. So then we look, do we understand the words? How do words relate in a sentence? That's our literary legends. How do they relate in a paragraph? Write down your questions. For example, if you're writing down the lexicon, this is one form that people have found very useful. Word parsing, base word, definition, BDAG reference. Now, you can have two different Greek lexicon. This course requires the BDAG Greek lexicon. And the Thayer lexicon you can often find online. Thayer's was written in the 1800s. The BDAG is normal. And so you can write down, most people wrote down the BDAG reference because it's required. But sometimes people would look up a secondary in Thayer, or they might look up in a theological dictionary. Kittle's is a theological dictionary. So you might ask, does the theological dictionary tell you more about the words? And how does this impact? That's our very question. So some of your basic questions, and you need to have 10 observations per passage. You can ask the questions about the word. Why is this word used in the sentence? What does this word mean? If you have 10 unknown words, you have 10 observations. That's particularly fine in some things. And then your sources to answer that would be the BDAG or perhaps the theological dictionary. Now, look at the grammatical. The grammatical of a sentence is really, what are the nouns, adjectives, pronouns? What are the verbs? What are they shared? That is something. Remember, the conjunctions help you break down a complex structure, and grammatical questions may add to it. Syntactical is the rough stuff to the Bible. It's the logical connectors you've worked on in English and figures of speech. Now, the raw stuff is chronological, historical, biological people, geographical, ideological ideas. So remember that you're looking for that in Greek. Now, the literary connectives, which I've put out here, we'll again go through this in class, are connectives that can tell you whether it's a contrast, an explanation. So use this chart to fit your Greek words. One thing to do is highlight and scan through your Greek text and see if you find any of these words. If you do, you have an observation based on logical connectives and the literary relationships. Again, two really easy ways to get 10 observations is to look at the definitions and to look at the logical connectives. They're there in the text. Then you have more difficult that come out of these. Is there a cause and effect? Notice that your literary connectives can give you sometimes contrast, comparison, but it might not give you cause and effect. Utos may give you cause and effect. Pro may give you cause and effect. But you may see things beyond it. You may say effect, cause, comparison, complementation, completion, continuity. These are more advanced literary relationships that you'll have to find in the text. And I'm always pleased when you see that. Then you have figures of speech, allegory, euphemism, hyperbole, metaphor. One of the things that is in the text is the idioms. There's a book of idioms that I'll reference. And if you think you have an idiom and you don't have the Exegesis text, do contact me. I will help you out with that. Then we have the intertextual, and for that you will have video after video to give you historical settings. What is the history of the church, the town, or the region? What is the contextual setting? Is it encouraging in crisis? Is Paul answering questions? You will notice that Paul has some of the same. In 2 Thessalonians, you may see some real struggles for answering questions. Because remember, Paul, as we'll go through in Acts, Paul witnessed at the Thessalonians. He was chased ahead of the mob to Berea. He went to Athens and then to Corinth, where he's writing this. He's trying to encourage them. He's trying to answer questions that Timothy brought back. Now we'll look at comparative, other letters written by Paul, other writings, and we'll look at rhetorical. There's a whole genre of research called social rhetorical that looks within the Bible and the Greek language, and I will cover that as we go forward. And lastly, we will go to theology. We will compare theology with ideology. But theology teaches about God, but ideology is the impact of ideas. You will see the word of ideas in Thessalonica, the idea of what Rome is, of the idea of what civilization is. This is an ideology that's held with the same type of fervor that many people hold God. And lastly, how do we apply to our life? It is this application you will be working up in your application section. Well, practical theology helps us grow in our understanding of the actual text because we observe it. We'll practice it as individuals. You'll write your weekly translation. You'll write your weekly exegetical notebook, and then you'll share a few of those observations with us. And then we'll discuss them every week. And that practical theology will refine it, our individual theology. Well, there are many things to look at, but this is the end of the three-part series that introduces you to Ladd's exegesis. There is a presentation of this in a short form that you will see in a quick methodology by George Ladd. Please do remember, I'm showing it on the screen, to view that and to read it. It will help you with the various portions of this and give you a little background. But I thought perhaps it would be useful to provide a lecture for you to provide additional information. I look forward to discussing exegesis each week with you. Thank you very much.